The quantum drive hummed with calculated precision as the Zorn Collective's primary reconnaissance vessel, the Dominion probe, emerged from hyperspace. Holographic displays flickered to life, casting an ethereal blue glow across the bridge's obsidian control surfaces. Admiral Vexnar leaned forward, compound eyes narrowing as initial sensor data began to stream across the primary viewing screen. Earth. A designation so mundane it barely registered in the galactic cartography of thousands of known civilizations. Yet something about this blue-green planet defied the Zorn's extensive predictive models. The planet's initial scans revealed a complexity that made seasoned xenoanalysts pause. Senior data analyst Krentok manipulated holographic interfaces, pulling up comprehensive planetary assessments. The data was maddeningly inconsistent. Primitive combustion-based transportation systems existed alongside rudimentary quantum computing networks. Massive urban centers sprawled across continents, connected by intricate communication grids that pulsed with an almost living energy. Orbital satellites, some advanced, some laughably basic, created a chaotic protective mesh around the planet. Analyze communication patterns, Vexnar commanded, mandibles clicking with curiosity. The ship's advanced linguistic algorithms began processing billions of simultaneous communication streams. Unlike most species with hierarchical communication structures, humans seem to communicate in a terrifyingly complex, decentralized network. Social media platforms, messaging applications, scientific journals, entertainment channels, all intertwined in a global conversation that defied traditional intelligence-gathering techniques. Preliminary cultural analysis revealed even more puzzling insights. This was a species that simultaneously pursued scientific exploration and engaged in seemingly irrational territorial conflicts. They developed technologies to cure diseases, while maintaining systems that allowed those same diseases to spread. They created advanced computational systems capable of solving complex mathematical problems, and then used those same systems to share pictures of small furry creatures. Technological development is nonlinear, Krentok reported, mandibles twitching in what passed for professional confusion among the Zorn. Computational capabilities suggest potential interstellar communication, yet primary energy production remains dependent on combustible fossil resources. The planet's defensive capabilities presented an equally enigmatic picture. Multiple nation-states maintained sophisticated military technologies, but no unified planetary defense existed. At least not in any way the Zorn could recognize. Their standard invasion protocols, which had systematically subdued hundreds of civilizations, would need significant recalibration. Quantum scanners detected something even more intriguing. The human brain demonstrated neurological plasticity beyond any known species in the galactic database. Where most civilizations developed specialized cognitive functions, human brains showed remarkable adaptive capabilities. A single human could rapidly shift between creative problem-solving, emotional processing, and analytical thinking in milliseconds. Preliminary invasion probability calculations are inconclusive, Krentok announced, a rare note of uncertainty in the analyst's voice. Admiral Vexnar understood the implication. In thousands of years of galactic conquest, the Zorn Collective had never encountered a species that defied standard categorization so completely. Humans existed in a state of perpetual potential, technologically, socially, and biologically. Deep-range scanners continued their methodical sweep. They detected ongoing scientific experiments ranging from subatomic particle research to preliminary efforts in genetic modification. Space exploration missions existed simultaneously with significant portions of the population living in conditions that would be considered pre-industrial by galactic standards. The communication networks were especially fascinating. Humans shared knowledge with a speed and breadth that suggested a form of collective intelligence, yet maintained a level of individual autonomy that prevented the kind of centralized control the Zorn typically exploited during invasions. Recommend extended observation protocol, Vexnar finally declared. The standard procedure would have been an immediate invasion assessment, But something about this planet, about this species, demanded a more nuanced approach. As the Dominion probe continued its silent vigil, the complexity of Earth continued to unfold. Humans remained blissfully unaware that they were being studied, that their entire civilization had just entered the preliminary stages of first contact with a species that had conquered civilizations across multiple galaxies. The universe, it seemed, was about to be reminded that predictability was often the first casualty of true discovery. The first wave of Zorn antimatter missiles descended with mathematical precision, each projectile calculated to eliminate critical global infrastructure. Guidance systems locked onto military installations, communication hubs, and government centers across multiple continents. The Zorn invasion protocol was a symphony of destruction, a method that had systematically dismantled countless civilizations over millennia. At the European Space Agency headquarters in Paris, Dr. Sophie Leclerc watched the initial sensor readings with a mixture of scientific curiosity and growing alarm. The incoming energy signatures were unlike anything in terrestrial defense databases. Quantum-entangled communication systems began lighting up across global networks, transmitting fragmentary data about the unprecedented attack. In Colorado Springs, the North American Aerospace Defense Command erupted into controlled chaos. Veteran commanders who had spent decades preparing for potential extraterrestrial threats found themselves facing a scenario that exceeded every simulation. Conventional defense systems seemed laughably inadequate against the incoming technological marvel of Zorn weaponry. The first missiles struck with devastating precision. A military research facility in Nevada disappeared in a silent, contained explosion that left no debris, just a perfectly circular crater of molten earth. A communication satellite network above the Pacific Ocean dissolved into a cascade of electromagnetic pulses. To any external observer, it would have appeared that human defenses were about to collapse. But something extraordinary began to happen. Instead of panic, a remarkable transformation swept across human communication networks. Social media platforms, initially filled with confusion and fear, quickly became impromptu strategy centers. Engineers, scientists, military personnel, and civilian specialists began sharing information at an unprecedented rate. Where other species would have fragmented under such an attack, humans began to coalesce into a dynamic, adaptive response system. In universities and research facilities, professors and students who moments ago were engaged in theoretical research now became emergency response coordinators. Semiconductor manufacturing plants rapidly retooled their production lines. Consumer electronics companies began developing signal jamming technologies. Automotive factories converted assembly lines to produce specialized defense equipment. The Zorn invasion protocol had no mechanism to process this level of rapid, decentralized adaptation. Military communication channels, designed with layers of redundancy, began rerouting through unexpected pathways. Civilian communication networks became backup systems for official channels. Satellite internet providers discovered ways to boost signal strengths and create alternative transmission methods. Dr. Leclerc's team at the European Space Agency discovered something remarkable. By analyzing the initial attack vectors, they could predict subsequent Zorn strike patterns. What would have been a fatal intelligence gap became an opportunity for counterintelligence. In Tokyo, a group of software engineers working for a telecommunications company developed a sophisticated algorithmic defense system in less than 12 hours. By the time Zorn Command received their first comprehensive attack report, human defenders had already begun developing multi-layer countermeasures. Military strategists from different nations, who had been traditional rivals, now collaborated through secure communication channels. A former Soviet satellite engineer shared insights with an American defense contractor. A Brazilian cybersecurity expert coordinated with a Chinese quantum computing specialist. The attack had transformed global geopolitics in a matter of hours. The Zorn invasion fleet, expecting the standard progression of planetary conquest, shock, fear, capitulation, found themselves facing an entirely unexpected scenario. Each strike seemed to make the human response more dynamic, more innovative. Quantum computers in research facilities began running continuous simulations, predicting and preparing for potential Zorn attack strategies. Machine learning algorithms developed by tech companies were repurposed into defense coordination systems. What the Zorn saw as a systematic elimination of human capabilities was actually providing humans with unprecedented insights into extraterrestrial warfare. By the time the first 24 hours of the invasion concluded, the Zorn found themselves in an unprecedented situation. They had not just failed to achieve a quick victory, they had inadvertently united and energized an entire planetary civilization. Admiral Vexnar, reviewing the initial attack reports, felt something unprecedented in thousands of years of galactic conquest: uncertainty. The universe, it seemed, was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not in its technology, but in its ability to transform challenge into opportunity. The Zorn Collective's Xenopsychology division had spent millennia studying and categorizing the psychological responses of conquered civilizations. Their databases contained comprehensive analyses of hundreds of species' behavioral patterns under extreme stress. Each civilization they had encountered followed predictable psychological trajectories: initial shock, followed by fear, then submission, and finally, complete capitulation. Humanity was destroying every single one of those carefully constructed models. Dr. Krenvex, the lead xenopsychologist aboard the Dominion probe, watched the incoming data streams with increasing bewilderment. Human response patterns defied every known psychological principle in the galactic behavioral archives. Where most species would show uniform stress responses, humans displayed a kaleidoscope of reactions that seemed to simultaneously contradict and reinforce each other. Social media platforms captured the most perplexing phenomenon. Instead of widespread panic, humans were documenting the invasion with a mixture of terror, dark humor, scientific curiosity, and an inexplicable sense of collective determination. Memes about the alien attack spread faster than the attack itself. Online communities transformed into support networks and impromptu research centers. Psychological monitoring systems detected something unprecedented. Individual human stress levels would spike dramatically during direct threat moments, but then rapidly stabilize through complex social support mechanisms. Where a single human might experience momentary terror, the collective response would quickly transform that fear into motivation, creativity, and resilience. Military psychologists discovered that humans possessed an extraordinary ability to compartmentalize emotions. Individuals could experience profound fear while simultaneously developing strategic responses. Emergency responders showed neural activity that suggested they were processing trauma and planning solutions simultaneously, a cognitive flexibility unknown in any other species. The global entertainment and media industries became unexpected psychological warfare tools. Documentaries, news broadcasts, and even fictional media began producing content that analyzed the invasion from multiple perspectives. Scientific explanations existed alongside personal narratives, creating a complex information ecosystem that absorbed and transformed collective trauma. Educational institutions quickly adapted their curriculums. Universities began offering emergency response courses. High school students developed communication technologies. Elementary school children created support networks for displaced families. The entire social structure seemed to be reorganizing itself in real time, treating the invasion as a collective challenge to be solved rather than an insurmountable threat. Zorn analysts noted something even more extraordinary. Human historical narratives were filled with stories of overcoming seemingly impossible challenges. Their cultural memory contained countless examples of civilizational resilience, from surviving ice ages to rebuilding after global conflicts. Each challenge seemed to have become a learning experience that enhanced collective psychological adaptability. Neuroscientific scans revealed a remarkable neural plasticity. Human brains were literally rewiring themselves in response to the invasion, creating new neural pathways at a rate that defied previous scientific understanding. Stress hormones that would debilitate most species were being transformed into complex problem-solving energy. Religious communities, scientific organizations, cultural groups, each responded with a unique psychological approach that somehow contributed to a unified planetary defense. Some found strength in spiritual beliefs, others in scientific methodology, yet others in cultural solidarity. The diversity itself became a form of psychological resilience. Online support groups emerged within hours of the initial attack. People shared coping strategies, technical solutions, and emotional support across global networks. Psychological professionals offered free counseling. Technology companies developed mental health applications specifically designed for invasion-related stress. The most shocking discovery came from long-term psychological profiles. Humans appeared to develop stronger social bonds and increased innovative capabilities under extreme stress. What should have been a destructive event was becoming a transformative social experience. Dr. Krenvek submitted a preliminary report to Admiral Vexnar that contained a recommendation unprecedented in Zorn military history: extended observation and potential diplomatic reconsideration. The Zorn Collective had encountered many species. They had conquered civilizations across multiple galaxies, but they had never encountered a species that could transform psychological vulnerability into a weapon of survival. Humanity was rewriting the fundamental understanding of psychological resilience. Each moment of the invasion was not just a military encounter, but a complex dance of collective human potential. The psychological enigma continued to unfold, challenging everything the Zorn thought they knew about civilizational survival. The captured Zorn communication device sat on Dr. Elena Rodriguez's laboratory workbench, a testament to human ingenuity and adaptability. What would have taken most species months or years to even begin understanding was already being systematically dismantled, analyzed, and reimagined within hours of acquisition. Research facilities across the globe transformed overnight. Universities, tech companies, government laboratories, and even privately funded research centers began an unprecedented collaborative effort. The alien technology became a global puzzle, with scientists from different disciplines approaching the challenge from multiple perspectives. A team of quantum physicists in Zurich discovered the first breakthrough. The Zorn communication device used quantum entanglement in a way that exceeded current human understanding, but not by an insurmountable margin. Within 48 hours, they had developed a preliminary decryption algorithm that began to unravel the device's complex communication protocols. In Silicon Valley, a group of software engineers and hardware specialists worked in continuous shifts. Consumer electronics factories retooled their production lines with remarkable speed. What began as military research quickly found applications in civilian technologies. Captured alien components were reverse engineered, with each discovery sparking new waves of innovation. Manufacturing plants that previously produced smartphones and computer components now created sophisticated jamming equipment and communication interception devices. 3D printing facilities generated experimental protective gear based on alien material compositions. Automotive manufacturers adapted their assembly lines to produce specialized defensive technologies. The most remarkable aspect was the distributed nature of human innovation. Unlike the centralized Zorn research model, human technological development occurred through a complex, decentralized network. Open-source platforms allowed researchers from different continents to share insights instantaneously. A breakthrough in a Brazilian university could be integrated into a Japanese defense system within minutes. Cybersecurity experts discovered something extraordinary about the Zorn communication networks. The alien technology relied on highly centralized communication protocols, making them surprisingly vulnerable to distributed attack methods. Human-computer networks, with their redundant and adaptive architecture, proved to be a significant defensive advantage. Semiconductor manufacturing took an unexpected leap forward. The alien technology provided insights into material science that accelerated human computational capabilities by decades. Quantum computing research, previously constrained by technological limitations, suddenly found itself with unprecedented breakthroughs. Medical research facilities began adapting alien scanning technologies for healthcare applications. The same technologies designed for warfare found immediate use in non-invasive medical diagnostics. Hospitals started integrating captured alien medical scanning devices, dramatically improving diagnostic capabilities. Energy research teams discovered potential applications for alien power generation technologies. What the Zorn considered standard propulsion systems became the basis for revolutionary clean energy research. Universities and research centers began publishing preliminary papers that suggested humanity could be on the brink of a significant technological transformation. The global scientific community operated with a level of coordination that defied traditional geopolitical boundaries. Russian mathematicians collaborated with American engineers. Chinese quantum researchers shared insights with European material scientists. The invasion had become a catalyst for unprecedented global scientific cooperation. Artificial intelligence research received a massive boost. The alien communication and computational technologies provided new paradigms for machine learning and adaptive systems. What would have taken years of incremental development was suddenly accelerated by direct exposure to extraterrestrial technologies. Military research facilities discovered that human adaptability was their greatest technological asset. Where the Zorn expected rigid, hierarchical technological development, humans approached alien technology with a combination of scientific rigor and creative imagination. Captured Zorn navigation systems were not just studied, they were completely reimagined. Each technological component became an opportunity for innovation. Manufacturing processes, communication protocols, energy generation systems, all were systematically analyzed, understood, and then transformed beyond their original purpose. The Zorn invasion had inadvertently provided humanity with the most significant technological leap in their species' history. What was intended as a conquest had become an unprecedented opportunity for growth and innovation. Admiral Vexnar received the latest technological assessment report with a growing sense of concern. The humans were not just defending themselves, they were actively improving and evolving their technologies at a rate that defied all known galactic developmental models. Technological alchemy was no longer a metaphor. It was becoming humanity's most powerful weapon. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before the neural interface scanner, her fingers tracing the holographic data streams that danced around her. Years of neuroscience research had prepared her for groundbreaking discoveries, but nothing could have anticipated the revelations emerging from humanity's response to the alien invasion. The human brain had always been a marvel of complexity, but under the extreme stress of a global alien invasion, it revealed capabilities that defied every existing scientific model. Neuroplasticity was no longer a theoretical concept. It was a weapon of survival. Neurological monitoring stations across global research facilities began collecting unprecedented data. The human brain was doing something extraordinary. It was actively reconfiguring itself in real time, creating new neural pathways at a rate that seemed to defy fundamental understanding of neurological development. Stress responses, typically viewed as a negative biological reaction, were being transformed into a complex adaptive mechanism. Where most species would experience neural shutdown under extreme pressure, humans were experiencing enhanced cognitive flexibility. Neurotransmitter patterns showed a remarkable ability to convert fear into focused problem-solving energy. The research revealed multiple layers of human neurological adaptation. Individual brain scans showed increased connectivity between different cognitive regions. The boundaries between analytical thinking, creative problem-solving, and emotional processing became fluid. Humans were quite literally rewiring their own cognitive architecture in response to an unprecedented threat. Psychological resilience emerged as a complex biological strategy. The human nervous system appeared to have developed an almost symbiotic relationship with stress. What would debilitate most species became a catalyst for enhanced cognitive performance. Extreme challenges triggered a cascade of neurological and biochemical responses that amplified human potential. Comparative studies with other species in the Zorn database highlighted the uniqueness of human neural responses. Most civilizations developed specialized cognitive functions. Analytical species with limited emotional capacity, or emotionally driven species with reduced analytical capabilities. Humans demonstrated an unprecedented ability to integrate multiple cognitive modes simultaneously. Dr. Rodriguez's team discovered something even more remarkable. The collective human response to the invasion was creating a form of distributed cognitive processing. Individual neural patterns began showing synchronization across global networks. Social media, communication technologies, and shared experiences were acting as a kind of external neural network, expanding human cognitive capabilities beyond individual biological limitations. Neurochemical analyses revealed a complex adaptive mechanism. Stress hormones that would typically trigger fight-or-flight responses were being systematically transformed into problem-solving compounds. Cortisol and adrenaline were no longer just survival mechanisms. They had become catalysts for innovation. The research suggested that human evolution had prepared the species for exactly this type of existential challenge. Millennia of surviving extreme environmental conditions, overcoming biological limitations, and adapting to continuous change had encoded a remarkable survival strategy into human neurological architecture. Preliminary findings suggested that the human brain possessed a form of recursive learning that was unique in the known galactic catalog of intelligent species. Each challenge became an opportunity for cognitive expansion. The alien invasion was not just a threat. It was a massive species-wide learning experience. Interdisciplinary research teams began connecting the dots. Anthropological studies, genetic research, neurological monitoring, and psychological assessments all pointed to the same conclusion. Human potential was fundamentally different from any known intelligent species. The Zorn invasion had become an unexpected catalyst for human cognitive evolution. What was intended as a conquest was transforming into the most significant developmental leap in human history. Dr. Rodriguez submitted her preliminary report with a mixture of scientific excitement and profound understanding. The human brain was not just an organ. It was a complex, adaptive system that could transform challenges into opportunities for growth. Admiral Vexnar received the neurological assessment with growing concern. The humans were not just defending themselves. They were fundamentally changing their own cognitive architecture in response to the invasion. The hidden strength of humanity was not in its technology, its weapons, or its social structures. It was in the remarkable ability of the human brain to see every challenge as an opportunity for transformation. The invasion had become more than a conflict. It was a profound exploration of human potential. The global response to the Zorn invasion defied every known model of international cooperation. Geopolitical boundaries that had defined human conflict for centuries dissolved in a matter of hours. The United Nations Emergency Session transformed from a diplomatic gathering into a planetary defense coordination center. In Geneva, representatives from countries that had been historical adversaries now sat side by side. A Pakistani diplomat shared critical communication interception strategies with an Indian cybersecurity expert. Russian military analysts collaborated with American defense strategists. North Korean technological research was freely shared with South Korean engineering teams. The transformation went far beyond government levels. Educational institutions became critical nodes in the global resistance network. Universities in Brazil began developing defensive technologies that were immediately integrated into European military systems. Chinese research facilities shared quantum computing breakthroughs with African technological development centers. Community organizations emerged as unexpected defensive coordination points. Local community centers became emergency communication hubs. Neighborhood watch groups transformed into localized defense networks. Religious institutions, cultural organizations, and social groups created intricate support systems that complemented official defensive strategies. Technology platforms played a crucial role in the united resistance. Social media became more than just a communication tool. It became a real-time, global coordination system. Crowdsourced intelligence gathering happened faster than traditional military intelligence methods. Ordinary citizens became active participants in planetary defense. Medical facilities developed an unprecedented level of global cooperation. Hospitals in different continents shared medical research, treatment protocols, and psychological support strategies. What would have previously been competitive research became a unified global health response. Manufacturing industries underwent a complete transformation. Automotive plants in Germany retooled to produce specialized defense equipment. Electronics manufacturers in Japan developed communication jamming technologies. Textile industries in India began producing advanced protective gear. The entire global economic system reorganized itself as a unified defensive mechanism. Educational systems adapted in real time. Schools became centers of resistance training. Students developed communication technologies, created support networks, and contributed to global defense strategies. Age became irrelevant. Children and teenagers became active participants in the planetary response. Agricultural networks ensured global food security. Farmers from different continents coordinated food distribution strategies. Urban farming initiatives expanded. Community gardens became both a food source and a local defense coordination point. The invasion had transformed global food systems into a resilient, adaptive network. Transportation infrastructure became a critical defensive asset. International airports transformed into emergency coordination centers. Shipping routes were rapidly modified to support global defensive efforts. Local transportation systems became flexible communication and supply networks. The most remarkable aspect was the psychological transformation. Humans who had previously been divided by cultural, religious, or political differences now found a profound sense of collective purpose. The invasion had become a catalyst for global unity that transcended every previous human-created boundary. Scientific research reached new levels of global collaboration. Open-source platforms allowed instantaneous sharing of technological discoveries. A breakthrough in a small research facility in New Zealand could be integrated into a defense strategy in Canada within minutes. The traditional barriers of academic and scientific competition dissolved completely. Emergency response systems became a global, interconnected network. Local firefighters, medical professionals, engineers, and community leaders shared real-time information and strategies. The traditional hierarchical response models were replaced by a fluid, adaptive system of collective action. Indigenous communities, often marginalized in global discussions, became critical sources of survival knowledge. Traditional survival techniques, environmental adaptation strategies, and community resilience models became invaluable to the global defensive effort. The Zorn invasion had accomplished something that generations of human diplomacy had failed to achieve: a truly united planetary response. What was intended as a conquest had become the moment of humanity's greatest collective achievement. Admiral Vexnar received intelligence reports that painted a picture entirely different from any previous planetary invasion. The humans were not just defending themselves. They were fundamentally reimagining their entire species' potential for cooperation. The united resistance was more than a defensive strategy. It was a profound reimagining of human potential. Admiral Vexnar stared at the holographic display with a growing sense of disbelief. The invasion that was supposed to be a routine planetary conquest had transformed into something unprecedented in the Zorn Collective's millennia-long history of galactic dominance. Human defensive capabilities had evolved beyond any predictive model. What began as a systematic assault had become a complex, dynamic engagement where every Zorn attack was met with a response that was simultaneously defensive and offensive. The humans were not just resisting. They were actively reshaping the nature of the conflict. Space-based observation platforms detected the first major shift. Human spacecraft, cobbled together from a combination of experimental technologies and rapidly adapted alien components, began to penetrate Zorn supply lines. These were not the uniform, hierarchically designed vessels of most conquered civilizations. Each human ship seemed to be a unique solution, developed through a decentralized, collaborative process that defied traditional military engineering. Communication intercept teams discovered the humans were using psychological warfare techniques that targeted the very core of Zorn collective consciousness. Sophisticated media campaigns, distributed information networks, and carefully crafted communication strategies began to introduce doubt and discord within the Zorn collective's traditionally unified command structure. The most alarming development came from the humans' ability to turn captured Zorn technologies against their creators. Communication systems were not just decoded but fundamentally reimagined. Propulsion technologies were reverse-engineered and improved upon. Defensive systems were adapted into offensive capabilities with a speed and creativity that completely baffled Zorn military strategists. Ground-based resistance movements emerged in ways that completely undermined traditional invasion protocols. Where most species would concentrate their defensive efforts in major population centers, humans created a distributed resistance network that made traditional military occupation impossible. Every community became a potential source of resistance, every citizen a potential combatant. Technological adaptation reached unprecedented levels. A Zorn energy weapon captured in the Australian outback would be completely redesigned and repurposed within days. Manufacturing facilities that were supposed to be strategic targets became improvised research and development centers. What should have been moments of vulnerability became opportunities for innovation. The psychological warfare became even more sophisticated. Humans began to use the Zorn's own communication technologies to broadcast messages that targeted the collective psychological vulnerabilities of the invasion force. They understood something fundamental about the Zorn that the Zorn themselves had forgotten. That technological superiority meant nothing without psychological resilience. Space-based engagement zones became complex, dynamic environments. Human spacecraft moved with an unpredictability that completely negated Zorn tactical advantages. Traditional military doctrine relied on predictable engagement patterns, but human pilots and AI systems created a combat environment that was more like an improvisational dance than a structured battle. Intelligence gathering revealed the most shocking development. The humans were not just defending themselves, they were actively preparing for potential future extraterrestrial interactions. Every captured technology, every moment of the conflict was being studied, analyzed, and integrated into a growing understanding of galactic potential. The Zorn supply lines began to show the first signs of significant strain. Human cyber warfare teams had developed methods of disruption that went beyond traditional electronic warfare. They were introducing subtle computational anomalies that progressively degraded Zorn logistical capabilities. Admiral Vexnar received reports that challenged everything the Zorn collective understood about planetary conquest. The invasion was no longer a simple military engagement. It had become a complex, multidimensional interaction that was fundamentally changing both human and Zorn societies. Communication intercepts revealed a profound transformation. Humans were not just fighting. They were learning, adapting, and growing through the conflict. Each challenge was being transformed into an opportunity for collective development. The turning point had arrived, but not in any way the Zorn collective could have anticipated. Humanity was not just resisting invasion. They were redefining the very concept of interstellar conflict. The tide was turning, and the universe was about to witness something entirely unprecedented. The final confrontation was unlike any engagement in galactic history. What began as an invasion had transformed into a profound interaction that would reshape intergalactic understanding for millennia to come. Admiral Vexnar watched from the command deck of the primary Zorn vessel as human forces mounted a defense that defied every known principle of warfare. The humans had not just resisted, they had fundamentally transformed the nature of the conflict. Each Zorn strategic initiative was met with a response so complex, so adaptive, that traditional military algorithms became obsolete. The communication networks of the Zorn collective began to fragment. What had once been a perfectly synchronized collective consciousness now showed signs of doubt, uncertainty, and something even more dangerous: curiosity. The humans had done more than fight. They had introduced a fundamental challenge to the Zorn's entire philosophical and military worldview. Diplomatic channels, previously non-existent, began to emerge. Human communication teams had developed translation and communication technologies that went beyond simple language conversion. They were creating frameworks of understanding that bridged fundamentally different modes of thought and perception. Scientific analysis revealed the true depth of human potential. The invasion had become a catalyst for a species-wide transformation. Technological developments that would have taken centuries were compressed into months. Medical breakthroughs, computational innovations, and understanding of fundamental physical laws accelerated at an unprecedented rate. The Zorn Collective's Central Command began to realize that this was no ordinary planetary conquest. Humanity represented something entirely new in the galactic landscape, a species that did not just adapt to challenges but transformed them into opportunities for growth. Planetary defense had evolved into a complex, distributed system that made traditional military occupation impossible. Every community, every individual had become a potential point of resistance. The humans had created a defensive strategy that was less about physical confrontation and more about collective potential. Technological adaptation reached levels that challenged fundamental understanding of species development. Captured Zorn technologies were not just reverse-engineered but completely reimagined. Propulsion systems, communication networks, medical technologies, all were transformed beyond their original purpose. The most profound transformation occurred in the realm of collective consciousness. Humans had demonstrated an ability to unite across previous divisions, cultural, political, economic, in a way that fundamentally challenged the Zorn's understanding of collective action. Psychological warfare had been turned on its head. Instead of breaking human resolve, the invasion had strengthened it. Each challenge had become an opportunity for collective growth. The humans were not just defending themselves, they were actively expanding their understanding of their own potential. Interstellar communication networks began to buzz with reports of the unprecedented engagement. Other spacefaring civilizations watched with a mixture of fascination and concern. The Zorn Collective, long considered the most formidable conquest force in the known galaxies, was being fundamentally challenged by a species that seemed to rewrite the rules of engagement with each passing moment. The final withdrawal was not a defeat in the traditional sense. It was a recognition of something profound. The Zorn Collective was acknowledging that humanity represented a fundamental shift in galactic understanding of intelligent life. Admiral Vexnar submitted the final invasion report, a document that was more of a philosophical treatise than a military assessment. The humans had not just defended their planet. They had demonstrated a form of collective potential that challenged everything the Zorn Collective understood about species development, conflict, and growth. The communication sent back to the Zorn homeworlds contained a recommendation that had never been made in the Collective's history: do not attempt further engagement. Humanity was not to be conquered, it was to be understood. As the last Zorn vessels began their retreat, human communication networks erupted in a complex mix of relief, celebration, and a profound sense of collective achievement. They had not just survived an invasion. They had transformed it into an opportunity for species-wide growth. The secret was simple yet profound. Humans never truly recognized the concept of impossible. Every challenge was an opportunity, every setback a chance for innovation, every conflict a potential for collective growth. The universe had just been reminded that true potential is not defined by technological superiority, but by the ability to transform challenges into opportunities. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not as a conquered species, but as a fundamental force of potential and transformation.